I do want to mention that the book shows this one being used, so I will demonstrate that, but we do have one method that is outlined in your initial PowerPoints that is not shown in the book that you will need to know. So I do want to show you that as well. But we'll start with the book. So for measuring the wrist, the book shows a lateral orientation or from the radial side. So what's going to be important here is that we keep the thumb out of the way. If we raise the thumb up, it's going to skew what landmarks we need to align to. So we keep the thumb out of the way by bringing it slightly into the palm, but it doesn't have to be necessarily flexed. So our position to start will be a neutral wrist position. We'll take the goniometer arms, separate them. The stationary bar will be aligned to the radius, the axis to the axis of the wrist, and then the moving arm will align to the second metacarpal, okay? So with the thumb relaxed, the second metacarpal is our landmark. What's not our landmark is the finger, okay? So the finger proximal phalanx area or anything in the finger is not our landmark, it's here. So as we align, we look for the 0 starting position. This number is 180, so that's not the number I look at. This number is 0, so we look at 0 as our starting position. If I go into flexion first, I'd like to have you move your wrist in this direction, down as far as you're able to. Oh, what's wrong with my position? My stationary bar is reversed, so I'm sorry, I started you wrong. We're going to come back. And we start the axis here, the stationary bar aligned to the radius, and the moving bar aligned to the second metacarpal. So 0 is here, 180 is here now, so we look at 0 as our starting position. If our starting position was not 0, meaning here and she can't go back anymore, well, that would be a 20, and she has lost from the neutral position, she's lost some degree of extension. But we're starting in 0. And I'm going to have you bend your wrist in the down position this direction as much as you can. And I'm realigning to the axis, the radius, and the second metacarpal to look at the numbers here as 0 to 65 degrees, and then to flex her passively slightly more at, looks like up to even 80 degrees. If we come back to the neutral position, then we're going to be able to align to 0, and then we're going to want to go into the extended position. Bring your wrist back in this direction as much as you're able. Keep that thumb relaxed, out of the way, aligning to the second metacarpal and the radius, and we're looking at from 0 to 70 degrees, and then passively on up to about 75. So wrist flexion, wrist extension, as shown in the book, measuring from the lateral direction or the radial side. Now, for deviation, the hand is pronated, the palm is flat to the table. Now our stationary bar will be aligned midline to the forearm, axis at the wrist, and now our landmark is the third metacarpal, not the finger. So as we align, we're going to want to be in a neutral 0 position. All right, so 0 is located here. In order for me to have her go into ulnar deviation, I'm going to have you bring your hand in this direction, not allowing her to flex or extend, following the third metacarpal, not the fingers. Okay, so if you follow the fingers, you're going to be way off. So follow the third metacarpal. You can slightly arrange if you need to. 0 to 35, and then passively not much more really, but maybe it could be said to be 40, but honestly, I don't think it's just a few degrees more. Coming back to the neutral position, and then asking her to come in this direction with your hand, remaining flat, 0 to 20 degrees. And passively, really not much more, maybe 25 at the most. So this is the method for measuring radial deviation, ulnar deviation, wrist flexion, and extension. This goniometer is appropriate. This one also could be appropriate for either way, and this one also could be appropriate for either way as well. This one is a little busy with its markings, so probably a little bit more difficult to distinguish the numbers. Honestly, my preference is keeping it simple with this one. Now, what's not in your book is the volar dorsal measurements, okay? Which, if you work into a hand therapy setting or orthopedic setting where you're seeing wrist fractures, things of that nature, this will be the typical standard way of measuring. So we're gonna have you put your elbow up on the table. You're gonna start in a neutral position. The goniometer arms are flat and placed on the dorsal side of the mid forearm and aligned to the third metacarpal in 0. Now I'm going to have you bring your wrist in the down position as much as you can. The moving arm follows and remains flush to the third metacarpal. The stationary bar remains flush to the forearm. There is a little gapping in here, which is totally fine. If you position it with gapping to the third metacarpal, that's incorrect. If you position it where it's gapping on this side of the metacarpal, that would be incorrect. If it's positioned where you have gapping here on the forearm, that's incorrect, as well as here. So you must remain flush with the forearm and the third metacarpal. And then this particular goniometer doesn't have see-through numbers, so I would simply turn to see that she has range of motion of 80 degrees. Now, measuring extension is a little bit different, and it's a little difficult to get the starting position. You may want to measure the starting position the way we just did, because when you're in the volar aspect, you have the thenar and the hypothenar eminences, which make it a little bit difficult to capture a 0 position. What's interesting now is that the fingers need to be relaxed and slightly open. The moving bar goes between the web space of the ring finger and the third finger. And then we're going to remain to the forearm the best we can. Again, the starting position's a little bit difficult in this one. Let's have you come back as far as you can with your wrist. I follow and fall within the web space of those two fingers. So I'm flush here and here. There is a little gapping here, that's okay, but I can't gap this way and I can't gap that way. It must be in contact here and here, as well as full contact with the forearm, and a little gapping here is completely acceptable. Fingers relaxed, not involved in extension. And we're here at 0 to 75. I can go passively for some additional motion. Another thing just to enforce is that the fingers, when measuring the wrist, should be slightly relaxed, not fully extended, or in flexion, not fully flexed, or they could just be relaxed. All right, so that's the goniometry. All right, so I'll let you guys practice.